100 doctors couldn't heal the son of millionaire mafia boss. Black cleaning daughter healed him. At the heart of Chicago's South Side stood St. Mary's Medical Center, a towering hospital that symbolized hope for some and despair for many. Its walls were lined with marble, its lobbies filled with polished floors, but beneath the surface, those halls carried the echoes of inequality. Patients with financial means were treated like royalty, while those without it were often left waiting, unheard, and unseen. And working quietly in those same halls was a girl no one imagined would change history. Her name was Maya Carter. At just 15 years old, Maya was unlike any other teenager. Her classmates worried about prom dresses, phone upgrades, or weekend plans. Maya lived in a different reality. Her father, James, worked as a janitor at St. Mary's, sweeping floors and scrubbing toilets to keep the family afloat. Her mother worked night shifts at a diner to stretch every paycheck. While other kids came home to bedrooms stacked with gadgets and posters, Maya returned to a cramped apartment with peeling paint and a single desk that she had turned into her sanctuary. On that desk lay stacks of medical journals, highlighted, dog-eared, and filled with handwritten notes. Maya had been fascinated with medicine since she was a child. She could recall passages with a photographic memory, flipping through terms and studies like most teens flipped through social media feeds. By the time she was 13, she had completed high school coursework and moved on to advanced college material. Teachers had marveled, calling her a prodigy. But outside the walls of her classroom, society rarely saw her as anything more than the janitor's daughter. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share a word of love in the comments. In the hospital, doctors and nurses would glance past her as if she were invisible. Security guards eyed her suspiciously whenever she lingered too close to patient rooms. No one imagined this quiet black girl mopping alongside her father could hold more knowledge in her notebooks than some of the physicians on staff. To them, brilliance wore a white coat and carried a title. To them, brilliance never looked like Maya. Still, she watched. Every day after school, she would accompany her father, soaking in the rhythms of the hospital. The codes called over intercoms, the whispered conversations between nurses, the worried cries of families. And when patients passed through those hallways, she paid attention. She noticed tremors in their hands, subtle shifts in their breathing, the small details that others often overlooked. To Maya, medicine wasn't just science. It was a puzzle, and every patient carried the pieces of their own mystery. And then, one winter afternoon, a new case arrived at St. Mary's that would change everything. A young boy named Daniel Romano, only 8 years old, was the son of Vincent Romano, one of Chicago's most feared mafia bosses. The Romano family's wealth and influence were whispered about across the city. Their ties ran deep into politics, law enforcement, and even medical boards. Vincent Romano was a man used to winning every battle except this one. Daniel had been rushed in after weeks of strange, worsening symptoms. At first, fatigue, then sudden seizures. His hair began to fall out in clumps. His body weakened until he could barely sit up in bed. The most respected doctors from across the country flew in: Harvard, Stanford, Johns Hopkins. They came with confidence and left with confusion. Test after test, scan after scan. Yet the boy only deteriorated. To the outside world, it looked like a tragic medical mystery. But to Maya, who had quietly observed from the edges of the ward while helping her father, something didn't sit right. She watched the way Daniel's limbs twitched, the way his skin seemed unusually pale with a bluish tint near his gums, and the way his abdominal pain worsened at night. She flipped through the mental library in her head, cross-referencing symptoms she had read in obscure journals. While the expert saw only riddles, Maya began to see a pattern. Her father often told her to stay quiet, to avoid drawing attention in a place where people already judged them for who they were. But Maya couldn't ignore what she saw. Something inside her told her that Daniel Romano's illness wasn't natural, that it wasn't a failure of medicine at all. And if she was right, It meant something far darker was happening in those hospital halls than anyone dared to admit. As the days passed, tension spread through St. Mary's. Vincent Romano's presence brought fear wherever he walked. Nurses whispered of his reputation. Doctors scrambled, terrified of the consequences if they failed. The pressure mounted. And still Daniel slipped further away. And in the middle of it all, unnoticed, the janitor's daughter continued to fill her notebooks. Every observation, every symptom, every connection that no one else seemed willing or able to make. Maya Carter's life had always been defined by invisibility. But soon the world would have no choice but to see her. Because in a hospital where wealth, race, and power decided who lived and who died, a 15-year-old black girl was about to uncover a truth that not only could save a boy's life, but reveal a secret that threatened to shake the foundations of the city itself. Maya's notebook was filled with scribbles no one else cared to see. She had pages of symptoms, timelines, and cross-references that pointed to a chilling possibility. Daniel Romano wasn't sick. He was being poisoned. But Maya was just the janitor's daughter. And in the world of white coats and polished shoes, that title carried no weight. When she first tried to share her findings, she approached a nurse during rounds. The woman barely glanced at her notes before laughing under her breath, as if the very idea of a teenager knowing something the Harvard-trained doctors didn't was absurd. "Go help your father mop the floors," the nurse muttered coldly, shoving the papers back into Maya's hands. The sting of humiliation burned, but Maya pressed on. Her second attempt was bolder. She stood outside a conference room where the lead doctors gathered, and when the meeting adjourned, she stepped forward, clutching her notebook tightly. Dr. Andrew Keller, the chief physician, paused just long enough for Maya to explain her theory. Thallium poisoning. She spoke quickly but clearly, listing Daniel's hair loss, abdominal pain, seizures beginning in the extremities, and the faint blue line on his gums. Signs any trained doctor should have recognized. Keller's expression turned from confusion to anger. Instead of listening, he sneered. "This is what happens when janitors' children think they're scientists." His words echoed down the hallway. Other staff smirked. Some rolled their eyes. A security guard was summoned to escort Maya away as if she were a trespasser. The sting of those words cut deep. Not because Maya doubted herself, but because she realized the truth. It didn't matter what she knew. It mattered who she was. A poor black teenager with a mop at her side was invisible in the eyes of men who carried Ivy League degrees. That night, she returned home to the small apartment she shared with her parents. Her father begged her to let it go. He reminded her of the dangers of speaking up in a world where power decides truth. But Maya couldn't silence what she knew. Daniel Romano was dying, and the so-called best minds were too arrogant to see it. If she didn't act, he wouldn't survive the week. The next day, she made her move directly in front of Vincent Romano himself. The mafia boss stood like a statue in his son's room, his sharp suit out of place against the beeping monitors. Nurses and doctors moved around him like they were walking on broken glass, terrified to fail in front of him. When Maya stepped in, clutching her notebook, the room froze. Every pair of eyes judged her instantly. What was a janitor's daughter doing here? Vincent's men shifted uncomfortably, ready to remove her. But before they could act, Maya spoke with a calmness that surprised even herself. She laid out her findings again, every symptom, every overlooked clue, piecing together the picture of thallium poisoning. For the first time, silence followed. And for the first time, someone actually listened. Vincent Romano's gaze locked on hers. This was a man who could read lies like open books. He didn't see arrogance or bluffing. He saw the truth. And he gave the order, "Test him. Now." 45 minutes later, the toxicology report confirmed it. Daniel Romano wasn't suffering from a rare disease. He was being deliberately poisoned. The elite doctors were humiliated, their reputations shattered in an instant. A girl they mocked had solved what they could not. But even in victory, Maya felt the chill of something darker. Poisoning wasn't random. Someone inside the hospital was doing this intentionally. And her gut told her it wasn't just Daniel. How many other children had died under the same roof because no one cared enough to notice? Her suspicion soon landed on Dr. Miranda Hayes, one of the hospital's most respected senior physicians. Hayes had dismissed Maya's persistence with thinly veiled contempt, her irritation sharper than anyone else's. And Maya noticed a pattern. Every time Daniel worsened, it was Hayes who had been on duty. But suspicion wasn't enough. If Maya was right, she wasn't just up against a doctor. She was up against a system that protected its own, a machine that would never admit fault, especially to a poor black teenager. If she accused Hayes without proof, she'd not only ruin her father's job but also place herself in danger. So, Maya began her own investigation in secret. She hacked into hospital records late at night, poring through case files of past patients. What she found made her blood run cold. 7 wealthy children had died under mysterious circumstances in the last 2 years, all during Dr. Hayes' shifts. Each death had been ruled a tragic, unexplained illness. No one had ever questioned the pattern, but Maya did, and the deeper she dug, the more dangerous it became. Hayes' eyes followed her now. Nurses whispered louder when she passed. Security guards seemed to appear in the hallways she walked through. It was as if the entire hospital had turned into a labyrinth of suspicion, and Maya was the mouse being watched by the cat. One evening, crouched near the staff lounge, Maya overheard Hayes' voice. The doctor's words were chilling. She spoke on the phone about the janitor's daughter asking too many questions. Maya's heart pounded as she hit the record button on the small device she carried. Hayes went on to describe a network, an underground ring where powerful families orchestrated the deaths of their own heirs, redirecting inheritances into hidden accounts. Maya had her proof, but she also knew something else. If Hayes realized she was the one who recorded it, her life would be in danger. In that moment, the stakes skyrocketed. This was no longer just about saving Daniel Romano. This was about exposing a secret so deadly it had already cost innocent lives. And Maya, a 15-year-old girl armed with nothing but her notebooks and courage, was the only one who could bring it to light. But could she survive long enough to make the world listen? The tension at St. Mary's had reached a breaking point. For days, Maya carried the recording of Dr. Hayes like a live grenade in her pocket. She replayed it at night, the doctor's voice chilling her to the bone. The janitor's daughter is asking too many questions. Each word was proof but also a threat. If Hayes discovered who held the evidence, Maya knew she might never walk those hospital halls again. The hospital that once felt like a second home now felt like a trap. Security guards lingered near her father's cleaning routes. Staff members lowered their voices when she passed. And worst of all, Hayes' eyes followed her with a calculated stillness, as if she already suspected the truth. Maya's father begged her to let it go. He told her it was too dangerous, that exposing someone as powerful as Hayes, backed by families with money, politicians, even law enforcement, was like standing in front of a moving train. But Maya couldn't stop. 7 children had already died. Daniel Romano was nearly the 8th, and if she stayed silent, there would be more. So she took the risk. She arranged a meeting with the hospital board. Not in secret, not in whispers. A full gathering, with Vincent Romano himself demanding answers at the head of the long polished table. Doctors, administrators, nurses, all assembled in a room thick with tension. The mafia boss sat like a shadow over the entire building, and when he called a meeting, no one dared to refuse. Maya stood at the far end of the table, small and out of place, clutching the recorder in her hand. She could feel the weight of every eye on her. The skepticism, the disdain, the disbelief that a janitor's daughter had anything worth saying. Dr. Hayes sat upright near the center, her expression calm, almost smug. She was untouchable, or so she thought. With a trembling breath, Maya pressed play. The room fell silent as Hayes' voice filled the space. clear, undeniable, damning. She spoke of the heirs being dealt with and wealth flowing to the network. She mocked the doctors who never questioned her results. She confirmed everything Maya had suspected: the poisonings, the cover-ups, the deliberate killings. Gasps erupted around the table. Some doctors looked sick to their stomachs. Administrators exchanged horrified glances. And Vincent Romano's jaw clenched tighter with every word, his knuckles white against the mahogany table. For a brief moment, Maya felt the weight lift from her shoulders. The truth was out. The evidence was undeniable. Justice had finally found a voice. But then Hayes stood. Slowly, deliberately, she rose from her chair, her eyes locked on Maya. Her calm mask slipped into fury. With a voice sharp as glass, she spat words that sliced through the silence. "Are you really going to believe a janitor's child over me?" The boardroom trembled with the weight of her rage. She accused Maya of fabricating evidence, of splicing recordings, of seeking attention she didn't deserve. She called her uneducated, a liar, a child playing with matches in a house she could never afford to enter. And for a moment, Maya felt the fear rise inside her chest. Because Hayes was right about one thing, the system was built to believe her. A white, senior physician with decades of experience, protected by status and wealth. Against her, Maya was just a poor black teenager in sneakers and a thrift store sweater. The imbalance was suffocating. But before Hayes could finish, Vincent Romano slammed his fist onto the table so hard the glasses rattled. His voice cut through the chaos like a gunshot. "Enough!" He leaned forward, his eyes burning into Hayes. This was a man who had built an empire on fear, a man no one dared to cross. And now, his fury was directed at the woman who had nearly stolen his only son. The room froze, and then the doors burst open. Police officers flooded in, summoned by the recording already sent to authorities hours earlier by Maya. Hayes's face twisted from rage to horror as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. As they dragged her away, she screamed accusations, her voice cracking with desperation. "You'll regret listening to her. You'll all regret this." Her words echoed down the hall as the doors slammed shut. For the first time, the hospital staff looked at Maya not as a janitor's daughter, but as the person who had unraveled a conspiracy larger than anyone imagined. Yet Maya didn't feel triumph. She felt the weight of the silence that followed. The weight of knowing that without proof, without her courage, Hayes would have kept killing. The weight of realizing how close she had come to being ignored forever. And in that silence, the truth became impossible to deny. A system that had dismissed her, mocked her, and nearly silenced her had been forced to listen. Not because it wanted to, but because she left it no choice. This was Maya's turning point, the moment the invisible girl stood at the center of the storm and brought the world to its knees. But what happened next, the fallout that would rock the nation, the consequences that would stretch far beyond those hospital walls, was something no one, not even Maya, could have imagined. In the weeks that followed Dr. Hayes' arrest, St. Mary's Medical Center transformed from a place of silence and suspicion into the epicenter of a national scandal. News channels swarmed outside its doors. Headlines splashed across televisions. Doctor arrested in poisoning plot, wealthy families implicated in deaths of their own children. The country was stunned. But for Maya Carter, the story was deeply personal. She had proven the truth, saved Daniel Romano's life, and exposed a conspiracy. Yet, beneath the celebration, she couldn't forget how close she came to being ignored forever, because of her age, her background, and most painfully, her race. Vincent Romano kept his word. He established the Carter Foundation, a scholarship program designed to help children like Maya, brilliant but overlooked, too often dismissed because they didn't fit the mold of who society believed could succeed. For the first time, Maya's family had more than survival. Her father was promoted to hospital operations supervisor. Her mother no longer worked night shifts at the diner. And the Carters bought their first home, a modest but proud symbol of the future they had fought for. But Maya's story was not just one family's victory. It sparked something larger. The Carter Protocol, a diagnostic guideline requiring doctors to test for heavy metal poisoning in unexplained illnesses, was adopted across hospitals nationwide. Within a year, hundreds of lives were saved. In medical schools, Maya's case became required reading. Professors who once would have dismissed her now taught her findings as gospel. And yet, beneath the surface, her triumph revealed something haunting. Because the truth wasn't just that Daniel Romano was poisoned. The deeper truth was that 7 children before him had died under the same roof. 7 children whose deaths were brushed aside, whose symptoms were ignored, whose families never received justice, because no one like Maya had been there to question the system. Think about that for a moment. How many lives are lost every day? Not because the answers don't exist, but because society refuses to hear them from the wrong voice. How many Mayas are silenced in classrooms, hospitals, and workplaces because of the color of their skin, the job their parents hold, or the assumptions stamped onto them before they ever open their mouths? Maya's victory was extraordinary, but it came at a cost. It exposed the painful reality of racism in professional spaces. The doctors who mocked her, the board that doubted her, the security guard who escorted her out, they were not strangers. They were the very people entrusted to save lives. And they almost let a child die not because they lacked knowledge, but because they lacked humility. At her high school graduation, Maya stood before her classmates, her voice steady and clear. She spoke not of revenge, but of responsibility. Justice doesn't always fall from the sky, she said. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, and sometimes you have to fight twice as hard just to be heard. But if you do, you can change the world. The crowd rose to its feet. Among them, Vincent Romano, his son Daniel alive and healthy, stood clapping, his eyes fixed on the girl who had given him what money and power could not. For Maya, that moment wasn't about applause. It was about visibility, about finally being seen for what she truly was. Not a janitor's daughter, not a statistic, not a mistake in the system, but a force powerful enough to rewrite the rules. And so, the story of Maya Carter lingers far beyond one hospital, one city, or one family. It is a story that asks us to look in the mirror and confront uncomfortable truths. How many voices do we silence because they don't sound like what we expect? How many talents do we ignore because they don't look like what we imagine? And how much injustice thrives in the silence created by arrogance and prejudice? Maya built her justice. She saved lives that others overlooked. She exposed a network that even the FBI had failed to stop. But perhaps her greatest impact was not the scholarship funds or the new diagnostic protocol, or even the scandal that shook the nation. Her greatest impact was showing the world that brilliance exists everywhere, even in places we refuse to look. The question is, will we keep ignoring it? Because the next Maya, the one who could save hundreds, thousands, maybe millions, might already be walking past us. Invisible, unnoticed, waiting for someone to believe in her before it's too late. If Maya's journey touched you, the girl who fought racism, saved lives, and proved that brilliance can come from anywhere, then let her story remind us that change begins when someone refuses to stay silent. What did this story make you feel? Inspired, angry, hopeful? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if you want more powerful stories like this one, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these voices alive.